We're so excited about this. Our first speaker is Jeff Tunn. In October of 2015, he joined Bluelock as the Executive Vice President of Product and Service Development. He is responsible for driving the company's product strategy and service vision and strategy. Prior to joining Bluelock, Jeff spent 5 years at Goodwill Industries of Central Indiana, where he led development and implementation of enterprise-wide information technology portfolio, including applications, infrastructure, security, telecommunications across the Goodwill business units. He serves on various boards and advisory councils, including the Hoosier Environmental Council Board of Directors, Indiana Network of Knowledge Governance Committee, Connected World Magazine Board of Advisors, CIT Industrial Advisory Board for IUPUI, the SAVI Technical Advisory Committee, the Polis Center, and the Mud Creek Conservancy. You thought you guys all had a tough job, didn't you? Jeff also spends time as a keynote speaker, blogger, and a writer on a variety of topics, including leadership, employee development, technology, and business operations. Away from work, he and his wife enjoy family, canoeing, gardening, and travel. Please help me in welcoming the first ever Sparks Tech speaker to the stage, Mr. Jeff Tunn.
There's something wrong with the world today. I don't know what it is.
Hello, and sorry for the shameless pop culture reference with the title Back to the Future. What we're really going to talk about tonight is leveraging the past to change the future. Over 100 years ago, George Santayana penned his famous quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Using 3 vignettes from history, we're going to look at leadership lessons from over 100 years ago and how that applies to business today in the 21st century. We'll start with Benjamin Harrison and Theodore Roosevelt. In 1888, Harrison was running for president of the United States. Roosevelt was an up-and-coming Republican who campaigned feverishly throughout the Midwest for Harrison. When Harrison won the election, he appointed Roosevelt to be part of the Civil Service Commission. Kind of an ironic an appointment, because the Civil Service Commission's responsibilities were to stamp out government corruption and make sure that those people that were hired by the government were hired based on their merits, not political favors. So Roosevelt, being Roosevelt, decided he was going to start his war on corruption in Indianapolis, Indiana, Benjamin Harrison's backyard. He would continue this living on the edge through his entire career, always pushing the edge, always pushing the envelope, always battling against the status quo, and always battling against the corruption. This would not make him very popular with the party bosses, but he was a very popular president. Now, when you imagine living on the edge, what images come to your mind? You might think of bleeding edge. You might think of cutting edge. You might think of the edge of the earth. All of these bring up negative connotations about living on the edge. I'd like to give you a new image tonight, one that means living on the edge is how you make progress. Now, I'm a river rat, so I like being on the river. This particular example is a kayaker running a series of rapids. One of the techniques that you use to run rapids is you find eddies, that calm area of water behind that boulder. This kayaker is attacking the edge, and as he attacks the edge, he moves into the eddy, where the water is calmer. He can rest, gather his wits about him, regroup, scout the river ahead. When he's ready, he will again attack the edge to make progress down the river. Our next vignette happens in the early 1940s. History is about ready to repeat itself. Europe is at war again. In the anticipation of entering the war, the United States military added 1.5 million men to its ranks, most of which needed to be trained. The few veterans that remained from World War I were very content to fight that war using the same tactics that were successful in World War I. However, the enemy, Germany, had accomplished something in 4 months that its predecessor had not accomplished in 4 years, seizing complete control of Europe. George Marshall knew that things had to be different. So Marshall ordered training maneuvers in Louisiana. over 500,000 soldiers would descend upon Louisiana for training games, for war games. They became to be known as the Louisiana Maneuvers. Now, what Marshall was doing was training his troops, but what else he was doing was looking for leaders. He was training for leaders. He was trying to identify those leaders in his ranks that could take the lessons of the past, apply the knowledge of the future, and develop a new strategy for waging the war. In short, he was looking for corporals who could become generals. One of the results of the Louisiana maneuvers was that 31 of the 42 division commanders were replaced with new leaderships. One of those leaders was Dwight D. Eisenhower. The same is true in business and technology today. What has worked for us in the past will not work for us in the future. We need new skills. We need new processes. And what of the leaders on our teams? Will they be ready? Can we help them see the future? Can we help them identify the skills that will be needed? Can we help them lead into the future? Our final vignette is from Lewis and Clark. President Thomas Jefferson instructed Lewis and Clark to explore the Northwest Territories in hopes of finding the Northwest Passage. They'd been gone for about 3 years and long given up for dead by those back in the United States. When they finally headed home, they got to the western slopes of the Rocky Mountains and were stuck. The snow was too deep to continue. So they returned to the Nez Perce Indian village and waited. They waited almost 2 months. During this time, they developed a new plan for their return home. Over the course of the journey, they had learned information that Jefferson could not have known. So armed with this new information, they were faced with a choice. They could wait, return home, report to Jefferson, ask him what to do, wait for his instructions, and then go carry them out. Or they could take a risk. So armed with the knowledge of Jefferson, armed with the knowledge of the new facts, and armed with the knowledge of the goals of the mission, they split into 4 groups. Pretty risky adventure, wouldn't you say, taking what was already a small core and dividing it into 4 smaller groups and heading out into what was still very much unknown. Call it taking risk, call it taking initiative. We as leaders need to know when to take those educated risks. We need to also create an environment like Jefferson did where our leaders, future leaders, know when they can take risks. And yes, they may fail, but they may succeed. Business and technology today are moving forward at an ever-accelerating pace. The future will be different than the past. We as leaders need to understand the past, know where we're going in the future, and know how to train our teams. We must be willing to live life on the edge or risk being sucked into the whirlpool of the status quo. We must train our teams for the future. What worked in the past will not work in the coming days. We also need to know when to take those educated risks and, more importantly, create an environment that empowers our teams to take those risks as well, or we may be leaving significant discoveries on the table. Thank you very much.